So welcome back to Consistently Candid. This time I'm here with Katja Grace, who is one of the co-founders of AI Impacts, which people might know for running, I think, like the biggest ever surveys of AI researchers about kind of forecasting AI progress and the probabilities of various outcomes and stuff like that. So yeah, do you want to give some background, say how you got interested in AI and what you're trying to do with AI Impacts at the moment?
Yeah, I I guess since I was young, I was interested in trying to make the world better in the most kind of uh, in the most effective way I could. This is before effective altruism existed, so I didn't talk to anyone else much about like what to do. But for ages, I was interested in kind of like developing world aid type stuff. And I guess I ran into the AI stuff on the internet roughly when I ran into the internet. So I guess about 2006 or something. Um, and I was like, oh, maybe that's the most important thing to do, like to make the world better. Though at that point, sort of AI risk felt quite far away and abstract, but potentially a big deal. I wasn't very sold on it being the best way to make the world better for quite a while. So I guess I've thought a lot about whether it's a real risk or not. Um, yeah, and then I guess AI impacts is it. I co-founded it in like I guess 2014, and over the years it sort of had more people working at it. For a while it was like mostly about one or two people, and lately it's had more people, but now we're back down to soon it will be pretty much me and contractors. It's the hope has been to do uh, like just various empirical kind of research about what's going to happen with the future of AI. And I guess to write up the I guess originally I was sort of thinking about that, or I and my partner were thinking about that kind of thing. We thought, we want to write up the arguments about things clearly so other people can use them. I think trying to organize a team to do that has been relatively difficult. So I've just moved back to more just trying to do it.
Yeah, cool. So what would you say is like your high level like AI worldview? Like where would you place yourself on the spectrum from excited to concerned, or are you more kind of like radically uncertain, somewhere in the middle? Yeah, how are you feeling about where we are and where we might be going?
Um, I would say I'm almost entirely concerned, but it's not because I don't think where we would go without the concern isn't amazing. Like I do think that AI um, could make the world very different in lots of amazing ways. It's just that if you die, then it's not. It's not. Uh, I guess there's a big asymmetry in my feelings about things, where it's like,
Yeah.
like going on an amazing holiday, but also you have cancer. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
my enthusiasm for this situation is quite low. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a very like obvious point that gets skimmed over a lot where people are like, oh yeah, AI has this maybe like quite substantial probability of wiping everyone out, but like don't forget about the potential upside. And it's kind of like, well, we're not going to get the potential upside if we like die in the process. So it seems like maybe it's a bit premature to be talking about it.
I think
Um,
I think there's also a sort of asymmetry that gets missed. That's like, I don't know, even if you think the chance of dying isn't very high. I mean, I don't think that we're definitely going to die or anything. And so, in the other cases, you really will get a good thing, like a very good thing, perhaps. I think, like, if you're thinking about doing something about it, like if you're thinking of like proceeding more slowly or cautiously, I think it's sort of implied often that then you won't get the good thing. But I think it's like, well, you will get the good thing like slightly later, and you'll still have it for the rest of eternity. Um, so it's kind of like the bad thing you could maybe choose to have or not. And the good thing you're probably going to get. So
Yeah.
Looking at the current scenario, that maybe the thing I'm comparing to is a different scenario where we proceed more cautiously and just get the good thing. And so then the current scenario is kind of like, do we have to do that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so maybe let's talk a little bit about the headline results from the 2023 version of the survey. What do you think are like the most important things people should know about the results?
Yeah, I think the median AI researcher thinks there's about a 5% chance of something like human extinction or entire human disempowerment from AI. It looks like I think we asked 4 different questions kind of about that, and the median answer was 5% for 3 of them and 10% for one of them, if I remember. So I think that is one big thing. Which I think was not very surprising, but I think it's important. I think the other big thing is probably that timelines to something like human level AI or any actually other like narrow things mostly got shorter, and the timelines to something like human level AI got shorter by a decade or multiple decades, depending on which question you look at. So I think, a bunch of people, like since the year before, that is. So during the year between mid 2022 and mid 2023, or mid to late, a lot of AI researchers came to think AI was substantially closer than they had thought. They were still talking decades out. So information.
So, like, a question I have is, what is explaining the discrepancy between? So, like, I think if I'm remembering correctly, it was people thought it was something like a 10% chance of. I think you call it human level machine intelligence. Is that right?
Machine intelligence.
Yeah.
To be in line.
Was it high level machine intelligence?
High level, yeah, but it's basically human level.
Yeah. So they thought it was like 10% by 2027, but then the 50% was something like it was like 2040 something. So like I guess that's like not that long, and is still considerably that's a shorter timeline than people were predicting last year, but then or in 2022 rather. But if you compare that to people who work at the labs or the Metaculus forecasts, which I think have weak AGI in like 2026 or something, and then Dario Amodei is talking about something sort of AGI like maybe between next year and 3 years after that, and there are some very aggressive timelines coming out of people who are closest to this technology. So what's going on there? Like I suppose you could be like, oh well, maybe like you could think on people that work at the labs, we should listen to them because they have more information, but you could also imagine that they have like some incentive to hype the technology, and maybe there's something about being really, really close to the product that could skew your perception of it or make you think that it's more powerful than it really is. But like it's a big discrepancy. So I'm curious what you think the characters are there.
I think another thing that might be going on is that like people are more likely to work at an AGI lab if they feel like AGI is quite soon. And unlikely to if they think it's like 100 years out. I think we looked into or mostly I looked into different different predictions people had made about when there'd be human level AI, I guess in about 2015 or something, and also separated it out by people at AGI, people working on AGI, people working on AI, people not doing either of those things. And I think then too, like people working on AGI thought it was sooner than people who are working in AI. And I think that people who working in AI thought it was sooner than other people, except maybe the category futurists. I don't remember very well, but my sense is that this is not like a super recent discrepancy between people working on AGI and people working on AI. But it seems like it might be bigger. But I think that suggests that there's like maybe at least some of these non-truth tracking things going on. If you think that like in 2015, the like being actually working on it wouldn't give you that good information about whether it's about to come soon.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe it would, but like, yeah, my guess is that a mixture of these different things are going on. I guess I'm inclined to like listen to the people at the labs a decent amount, so I don't know, come to a view that's like somewhere between the two.
Yeah. It's also like interesting that I guess there are a set of people who made predictions. I'm thinking like Ray Kurzweil and I think maybe Shane Legg as well, who kind of made predictions like in like 2000 or something, and they were projecting it would be something like 2028 or 2029. And it kind of seems like a bunch of people at the labs are starting to converge on that position now. And then if the academics that are being surveyed, their timelines are dropping each year, and I don't know, like maybe next year the timelines have dropped 10 years more or something. It's like it almost feels like a bunch of people are converging on this similar point somewhere in the
Yeah,
late 2020s. So it's like an interesting observation. I don't know how much we should read into that, but that's a little spooky.
that's interesting. I don't know if I expect the like the survey number to drop like another decade next year. We just it barely moved in the like between 2016 and 2022. So yeah, there's like
Yeah,
less of a kind of trend of dropping precipitously, I guess.
yeah. I guess maybe it's just the post chat GPT kind of like update that everyone did or whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that might happen again, I guess. I'm sort of confused by ChatGPT causing such a drop here because I guess I had thought that like AI researchers kind of knew where the technology was at. Or I feel like there's some sort of narrative that, AI researchers are not so surprised by ChatGPT, but like it was in a form that meant the public could appreciate it. I guess, but it seems like this
Yeah,
doesn't match
that's true.
very well.
Yeah, that is true. But yeah, it does seem like I don't know, the narrative I'm hearing is that like so many people who worked in the field were taken aback by how capable it was or something. Um, but yeah, it's surprising that it would be that much of a shock to them.
I mean, people working on lots of different things in AI probably, so I guess they're not all.
Yeah, that's
that.
true.
You said that you called this the academics answering the survey. Should note that it also includes a bunch of people in working in industry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah. I guess another question is like the definition that you're using in the survey, this high level machine intelligence thing, is that a slightly different definition to what a lot of people are using when they talk about AGI? Because I've heard like AGI seems to be defined by a lot of people as like automating cognitive labor, or like I think I've heard Sam Altman describe it as like it would be like a drop-in remote worker or something like that. And then the HLMI thing seems to be talking about automating everything. So is that does that explain some of the timeline discrepancy? Or I guess you could think that once you automated all cognitive labor, maybe it's like quite a small jump from there to automating all labor because then maybe there's some like crazy speed up in like robotics or whatever. But yeah, why did you go with that definition as opposed to the definition that a lot of other people seem to be using?
I guess I'm not aware of a lot of other people using that particular one, though, or rather than people just sort of using both kinds of things. I think there are like a number of axes on which such definitions can vary, and people often don't notice them very well. And then also like, does it cost the same amount as a human, or can it be like really expensive? Is it does it have to be like one system in some sense, or can it just be like, yeah, in the whole economy there is a machine that would do any particular task that you want or any particular cognitive task? And so I guess in 2016 when we were doing this first survey, we sat down and thought really carefully about what definition would be good. And I can't actually remember the reasons for going the way we did on each point. my guess is on the like, is it all tasks or all cognitive tasks point? An important thing is that it's like relatively hard to define cognitive tasks, whereas all tasks is relatively clear, especially because like, you know, a lot of tasks are presumably cognitive-ish and also include some non-cognitive bits. So then you have to be like, yeah, we can do the cognitive bits, but not the non-cognitive bits. It's like, I don't know, is moving your arm around successfully a cognitive bit? Well, it's being done by your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're also somewhat trying to keep it in line with other definitions at that time. Like, there have been various other smaller surveys beforehand, and I think there have already been like 2 different uses of HLMI to mean different words, even like it might have been high level and human level or something, or that's probably wrong, but yeah, there's like various definitional confusion, and I think we were somewhat trying not to make it worse and also trying to have a definition that would be like interesting to know about and possible to communicate to people, and maybe other constraints we're getting now. It was a while ago.
Yeah, I definitely think it's like a good definition to run with. I mean, it's just such a, the AGI thing is such a like fuzzily defined term that it feels almost like useless at this point. So nobody agrees what it means.
This makes sense. I guess I often talk about just like, I don't know, I feel like people often have the sense there's going to be some kind of big AI thing, and maybe it doesn't matter quite how you define things because people think that they're all going to happen at once a bit, or like at least people working in AI, the sense is that like, yeah, there'll be the time when the AI does the crazy thing, which I guess I'm somewhat skeptical of. But.
Yeah. Another, like, there is also a discrepancy. So there's a discrepancy in terms of like timelines between people in the survey and then people in the labs. And there's also, or there appears to be a discrepancy in terms of probability of bad outcomes. I think it's like interesting, this 5% number I see floating around a lot. And depending on how pessimistic you were to begin with, or depending on how steep you were in this issue to begin with, the 5% is either like super alarming to you or like kind of reassuring. I think for me, when I was like first looking into all this stuff, I don't know where in the pipeline I was when I came across the 2022 version of the survey, but I think I remember seeing the 5% and thinking, oh, it's only 5%. And this is like such a big survey, like, great. But that's interesting too, because I guess one story you could tell there is, you know, it's a selection effect. Like, people are more likely to go work on safety if they think that safety is likely to be a big problem, and so that's why those people are giving these like insanely high probabilities. And then, you know, less concerned people are just not thinking about it as much. Or you could think about it the other way around and say, oh, the people who've thought a lot about the problem have realized how hard the problem is and how unlikely we are to solve it, and that's why the probabilities are way higher. And then people who just aren't focused on that just haven't quite realized how big of a deal this potentially is. So which one of those narratives do you think you're more inclined to believe, to buy into? That was a very rambly question, but hopefully you see what I mean.
Right, so the first possibility is like the people who worry about safety leave and do safety.
And that's why a safety researcher might give a probability that's something more like 70%, you know, but that's because those people have been motivated to go and work on that thing because they were worried to start with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Where that's like that suggests the real number is like somewhere between the two, right? Like, so probably above 5%, but below 80% or whatever. Right. Whereas there's also just like, maybe the safety people have thought more about it, so we should listen more to them.
Yeah.
My guess is that there's like sort of a combination of things. Like, I think there's a general problem that like, if you start to look at a thing and you're like, this isn't important, then you don't look at it more. So even if like if half of people would look at a thing and be like, this is a problem, and half would be like immediately, this is not a problem, then the half who think it's not a problem stop looking into it, and the other half look into it more, and so it sort of ends up that the like being informed just gets correlated with being more concerned all the way along. I guess I expect like a mixture of selection effect for being more concerned and actually having looked into it more.
Yeah, I guess that is like the inevitable but unsatisfying answer, that it's like somewhere between the two. It's interesting.
We did actually ask people how much they had thought about the problem, so we can look at maybe that would be a good thing to remember, but should look it up. Okay. So people who have thought more, this table just divides people into having thought more and thought less, but I think we asked them on a sort of 5-point scale. Okay, both people who have thought more and who have thought less put about 5% on extremely bad outcomes. The people who've thought more put 15% instead of 10% on extremely good outcomes.
So there doesn't seem to be a correlation between having thought more about it and thinking it's more likely to go badly.
Doesn't look like it. And yeah, unless I'm
I think good.
Quickly, but yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
This is a question about like how good or bad the future will be as a result of HLMI or something. So people are putting it in 5 buckets of how good, not including the various questions about extinction more directly. But it was extremely bad, I think, e.g. human extinction.
Yeah. How do you feel about like how the results of this survey get sort of publicized in the media? Like, do you think that they're like, when there's a headline that's like half of AI researchers that think there's at least a 10% chance that AI is going to kill us or something, like, are you happy with the headline figures that are being picked out? Like, do you think that they're being contextualized well? Like, do you think the discourse around it is good, or are you like, no, like, this isn't how we should be thinking about this? I'm just like curious, like, how you feel about what happens when the results kind of escape into the wild and people start discussing them.
Yeah. It's hard to remember particular examples that well. My sense is that usually the summary of like the survey findings is pretty decent. Like like half of AI researchers think 5% chance of doom or something. I feel like that kind of stuff is usually all right. I guess. I mean, there are some that are just kind of wild, like biased surveys and such and such. I'm like, wait, why do you think we asked this one guy? I think like the tendency to be like, well, on the one hand, thousands of surveyed people said X. On the other hand, 2 people we talked to said they don't like it. For whatever reason, I feel like is a kind of, I think it's an attempt at balance, but it's like a strange, a particularly strange version of it to see or something, where like the
yeah I guess that's the other thing I wanted to talk about was so your the piece you wrote, I think in like late 2022, where you talk about like let's think about the case for slowing down AI. And you just make the like really quite obvious point that maybe it would be easier to like not build the Doom machine than it would be to align the Doom machine, seeing as we've already been trying to do that for like 2 decades and haven't really got anywhere. And then you kind of talk about how this is sort of hand-wavily dismissed as an option by maybe like the majority of people. But you don't kind of express a strong opinion as to whether you actually think it would be good on net if we did slow down. So I'm wondering, like, has your view on that evolved at all since you wrote that, given, I guess, kind of the explosion of public awareness of this issue, and B, sort of shortening timelines and that kind of thing? And like, do you think that other people's views about the feasibility of this have changed, or would you still say it's kind of the same as it was when you wrote that?
I think my sense is that other people have come around a lot, and then I guess like prior to writing that, I'd been talking to people about it for about a year, I think, or something, or like yeah, and I really feel like there was almost entirely pushed back. Whereas now, like, I don't know, a bunch of people have pause AI things on their Twitter and stuff. Like it seems like a more discussed and like like a thing that people are actually in favor of. I think my views have probably shifted toward slowing down AI. Like, I think it's true that when I wrote it, I was like, I think mildly in favor of slowing, or maybe like, I think I was more just in favor of thinking about it more. Like, it seemed like before really either, you know, I feel like either trying to slow down AI or deciding not to try and slow down AI, those are both kind of substantial moves, and I'd probably want to think about it more, was my position at the time, probably leaning toward expecting that slowing down is better, but it's hard to actually remember. I think my views have shifted more towards slowing down being good since then, partly just because like I feel like the further pushback I've received hasn't seemed very good, like, or has not been sort of compelling, like things that are kind of like, if we were to slow down AI, that might stop OpenAI from being in the lead, and it's important that OpenAI is in the lead because then they'll be able to slow down a lot at the key moment if there's no one else near them. Like in reality, do I expect OpenAI to like slow down a lot, like to recognize the point when they're on the brink of AGI, and it's important to slow down a lot to like know that happening, and like for the organization, which is a whole bunch of different people with different incentives and stuff, to be like, all right, we'll pause here and invest in safety while we wait for the other orgs to catch up. I think
the we will pause at the exact moment argument I've always found very suspicious.
I guess there's another kind of argument I especially heard since then. It's more like, well, hardware progress will continue anyway. So you can't slow down the real time to AI. You can just not actually see it as it's happening, and as the underlying technology is kind of getting better, you're not actually building things as much as you can. So you still get at a similar time, but you get like a much bigger jump in capabilities later.
It's like the hardware overhang argument, I guess.
Which I don't know, maybe I guess then it seems like you should really focus on like somehow constraining the hardware. I guess if like the hardware if it's a kind of price performance improving thing, like maybe there's something you can do with the price of it. I don't know. Like it still feels weird to treat it as kind of like a time to throw up your hands, I guess. And I guess I'm not sure about the underlying model of hardware progress being the only thing that matters here, roughly. I think that's a particularly, I guess, I feel like people often talk as if it is, and like, I don't know, maybe it is. Is it in a question in the survey about like how much less progress we would have seen in the last little while if we had less of various inputs? It doesn't look like less hardware is sort of considered the overwhelmingly important one. So that was interesting. It's quite possible to me that people are misunderstanding that question somehow, because their answers are just so all over the place.
It seems like at the very least it's like we shouldn't dismiss the idea of doing a slowdown based on certain projections people have made about how important certain inputs are, when it's like there's just such a massive amount of uncertainty about all of that anyway. So it is weird that people are like, well, clearly we can't do the slowdown because it will happen anyway because of X thing, and like no one even really knows how likely X is to happen. So I think it's
Yeah.
very strange.
Yeah.
Um,
I
if
guess
you're
I feel
like,
very
oh sorry,
motivated. Like it seems like,
yeah,
if you really, really wanted to slow this down because your life depended on it, like you would look into how much different inputs affect whether it's possible to slow them down or something.
yeah, it seems ideological to me or something. Like people are committed to the idea that this is a a bad or useless intervention, or that it's never going to work, and they are not very motivated to investigate the assumptions that that rests on. Um, yeah, I guess like if you're like broadly in favor of slowing down, or on balance in favor of slowing down, um, what kind of intervention do you think would be the best for achieving that? Like, does that look like an actual like pause globally, or does that look like a maybe a nationalized AI project in the US, which presumably would slow things down somewhat because you wouldn't have a race, or maybe like an internationalized one, or is it just some kind of like licensing regime that kind of just makes it a little bit more difficult to release things? Or yeah, like what do you think is the thing we should try and do?
I actually don't have strong views. Like, I feel like I would need to think a bunch more, and I haven't. Um,
Yeah, fair.
in general, is like you can guess how much slowing down is good, and people have very different opinions about that, and then shoot for the amount that seems good. I feel like a different way you can structure the whole thing is to shoot for an amount of safety, and just to be like, well, we're not going to move to the next step until we're sure that the next step is safe. I feel like that's or is a certain amount safe. I feel like that's a sort of better structure, in that maybe it lets people who would otherwise disagree agree. Like you know if someone is like, it's going to be very safe to move to the next step, um in general, and other people are like, no, it's going to be very dangerous to move to the next step in general. Then if you have some way of actually testing at each step how safe it is, you can maybe both agree that you will move to the next step if the test comes out a certain way.
Yeah,
um
I guess that's like sort of kind of what we're doing in a sense. Like that sounds a little bit like what so at the career summit there were those, I guess that at the moment they're voluntary commitments, but there was one in there that was, I think my understanding is that they're going to try and define thresholds ahead of the next summit in France. But yeah, the voluntary commitment is to not go to the next level if you can't rule out like extreme risks or something. And then the question is just defining where those levels are. So I guess in
yeah.
theory, if something like that was actually enforced, then you would get like conditional pauses or something, or like,
Yeah.
everybody could agree that the next step was too risky. So if that's like the ideal intervention, then it looks like we might be moving kind of vaguely in the direction of that. But
I
I'm not
wouldn't go so
too
far as
sure.
that's the ideal intervention. As I say, like,
Or
yeah,
it's or and a possible useful intervention. I don't know. It seems like nothing is the ideal. It doesn't really seem to be any risk-free path forward here. But um,
yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Um, yeah, I guess another thing we could talk about is um, just the basic case for X risk. Because you mentioned earlier, you spent a lot of time thinking about, like, is this even a real thing? So yeah, what do you think is the most compelling reason that it might be, and then what is the most compelling reason that it might not be a problem?
Yeah. I think the reason to expect that it might be a problem is, I think, that we're probably going to make things that are like new agents, kind of like humans, that have things they want in the world and go about and get them without kind of human oversight or human pressing the button again at every step. So, I guess we so far have humans that are like that, and like animals that are much worse at having goals and going out and achieving them. Um, and we're sort of going to add a new kind of thing like that, probably. Um, yeah, I think people often talk about the heaps more intelligence as the big thing that we should be worried about. But I think if you didn't imagine that was coming in the form of like actually new, potentially crazy people or things that are like people, I think it would be much less alarming. Like I think if we were just all smart, like all much smarter, like I would be pretty optimistic. So yeah, very likely to make things that are like agents. And so then it matters what they're trying to do. Because I guess they're likely to be very powerful, I think, or like very, very competent compared to humans eventually. And I think if the world is full of like very competent people, it's sort of hard to see how humans maintain control over what happens at all. I think there could be ways, like if they're all just really keen to help us. But the way we're going, or I guess in general, it seems like there's quite a high risk of them not having our best interests at heart in general. For instance, I think like if you create a bunch of agents and you just give them kind of useful for the economy type goals, like if you make an agent that just really wants like Walmart to do well, to work at Walmart, like to help with strategizing, like that might be good for a bit, but like for Walmart. But like if you sort of fill up the world with such agents, like if a lot of the population wasn't humans but was like people with a obsessive desire for one company or another to make money, like you probably end up with a pretty messed up future that doesn't look anything like what humans think of as good. I think that's one kind of scenario where you did actually successfully make the agents have some sort of goals that did seem valuable at the time. I think another kind of concern is just that you don't manage to give them goals that are like the ones you wanted, even like the current way that we make AI systems, there's nowhere that you write in the goals or something. You just watch them act in the world, repeat it, and like change the weights until they do the thing that you wanted in that scenario, but you don't really know what's going on inside them or what they'll do in totally different scenarios in the future. So I think like you really pin down what their goals are.
Yeah. Do you think some people have made the argument that the kind of like classic X-risk case, I'm thinking like the one made by Nick Bostrom, I guess, in Superintelligence, that doesn't really stand up too well in light of how LLMs are actually being developed, because it seems like actually the LLMs like do understand human values. Doesn't necessarily guarantee that they'll particularly care about them or care about preserving them once they get powerful enough. But some people have made the argument that it doesn't really seem like we're going to create some weird maximizer that's just going to like arbitrarily decide to do a strange thing because it doesn't understand what we actually wanted. Do you think there's any merit to that, or are those people misunderstanding the original argument?
You're misunderstanding the original argument. I guess I think the original argument does not necessarily claim that the AI will not understand human values. I think probably the whole time everyone's thought that it would understand human values in the same way that it understands like the whole world pretty well if it's going to do anything. But understanding human values is not the same as having human values. If you imagine like a very smart like psychopath, quite plausibly they can predict how humans will behave, which is to say like understand their values enough to like manipulate them and stuff, because that's important. But that's pretty different.
I guess so obviously it's one a different question whether they'll care to preserve them, but it kind of seems like the like paperclip maximizer idea is like you tell it to go and do a thing and it just like doesn't realize that it wasn't supposed to turn the whole world into paperclips in the process of doing that thing. It's not like it's like it's trying so hard to do the thing you asked for, but for some reason it doesn't occur to it that it should not blow everything up in the process. Like that seems to imply that the AI just like doesn't compute what people care about.
Right, like you're saying that that now, like with an AI sort of the sort that we have, but much more capable, if you said, please make me some paper clips, it would it would at least not try to, turn the whole universe into paper clips. It would like if its values are implicit to like do what you want in some way, it would do something more like make a few paper clips.
Or like, I guess maybe it's like not even guaranteed that it would even try to do the thing you asked, but it seems unlikely that it would accidentally do a terrible thing while genuinely thinking that it's pursuing the goal you gave it or something. I don't know. I guess maybe the difference doesn't really matter that much if like it ends up destroying us either way. But like it doesn't seem like the some smarter version of what we have now is going to be extremely misguided about what its programmers want it to do.
Yeah, that seems right.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, I'm not sure.
it does seem like what the I think I had not thought of the original argument, or sorry, the original argument involving paper clippers as involving misunderstanding. But yeah, that makes sense. I guess I think that if it understands perfectly what you want, and you have managed to make a thing that wants to do what you want, then pretty plausibly that's all right. And maybe the difficulty is in like making a thing that wants to do what you ask it, like that.
Yeah. Is this the distinction between inner and outer misalignment or something? I can never remember which way around it is, but it's like one is maybe which way around is it? Like one of them is get it to understand what you want, and then the other one is get it to care about doing what you want. And there's like these two different, like you only need one of them to fail for the thing to be like catastrophically bad or something.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure if I know the definitions of those, or I think I might. Yeah,
I don't actually remember.
As it seems like you break down the process into more than two steps of like there being something, or you being a creature who could be interpreted as having some things you want, to like the AI doing those things. It seems like there's, I don't know, like can we, like, is there a particular thing that you do want? Does it make sense to think in that way? We in any way like figure out what it is and like maybe write it down.
That's the other one, is like defining a goal that would be good if it was actually pursued successfully or something. Is
there such a goal?
Maybe not. So the most compelling argument that we should be worried is we're just going to create really strong agents. The agents are probably going to be like goal directed in some way. And then I guess the third step is like it seems quite likely that those goals are going to be bad for us if they are effectively pursued. That seems pretty straightforward. But what's the best reason you can think of why it might actually just be totally fine by default, even if we don't put much effort into avoiding a bad outcome?
I think one big reason is just maybe it's not that hard to get AIs to have sufficiently similar goals to us, or like have goals that are pretty I don't know, like maybe they don't need to be that close to our goals. It's like, well, humans actually want a bunch of different things. Like maybe it's sort of wrong to think of like human values as a narrow thing. Maybe if you get AI systems that are like somewhere in that cluster of things, and we continue to have the like norms that keep different agents in line, like we have laws, and humans often have the desire to not like be obviously cruel and bad to people around them. You could probably have something like that, that like you know that it's not that hard to get AI goals within the space of things that can be kept in line by like cooperative institutions and
Mm.
like I don't know.
So is that an argument about how like maybe they don't need to be so perfectly aligned, or like maybe the target like isn't that small, or there's like a wider space of yeah, there's like a wider target to hit where like maybe we don't need to get it exactly right, but things could still be fine if we're just kind of roughly in the ballpark of like of like having aligned them to what we want or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's I would also think of it as well in the original argument we didn't say anything about how big the target is or how accurate our shooting is. We were just like, well,
Mm,
if we shoot wrong, we could get off the target. Um, and it's like, I don't know, this is a quantitative question. And
yeah,
like, for all we know, the target is like quite a bit bigger than our shooting accuracy. I think if you, as I wrote about this in counter arguments to the basic AI case blog post that I wrote before, I think sort of in the early days, and people are saying things like value is fragile, or Eliezer wrote, if you just don't uh, include the idea of boredom in your values, like you might get some sort of bad future. But I think that's a very implausible kind of problem with the current AI systems where you just like show them a lot of things and they learn some kind of like I don't know. You show them a lot of faces and they learn what a human face is like, and they're not going to just forget to put in the nose or something. That was my example.
yeah,
Like that's not the kind of error that they make. Like they're very likely to make a thing that looks a lot like a human face. And so you might
yeah,
think that if if you showed them lots of sort of examples of things you think are good futures, uh, they wouldn't then be trying to maximize some kind of simple thing that takes them to a place that looks very unlike those futures, perhaps. Um,
yeah. So is it like Eliezer was making an argument about how if you had to like just get a piece of paper and write down what human values are, you would almost definitely forget something important. But and that's probably true, but it doesn't really matter that much because it's like we're training them on the whole of the internet. So it's not like we don't actually have to do that. Like it's going to be a lot of those things are just going to be obvious through like repeated examples. We don't literally need to sit there and be like, these are our values, or yeah, is that
yeah,
kind of
never
what you're
doing an
saying?
explicit thing. And and so it is somehow learning a complicated, nuanced picture of some sort. Um, this isn't a yeah. I could be wrong about what Eliezer was originally saying, and this is a sort of hand wavy response to it, but it's sort of like intuitively that doesn't feel like the kind of thing that goes wrong with these kinds of systems. Um, I guess it
Yeah,
would be interesting to know more about like I don't know examples of things like that going wrong with them if they do something.
yeah. No, that's a fair point. Oh yeah, a thing that I like ask everyone, because I just think it's like interesting,
Yeah.
is like what they think about the online AI safety discourse. I think it's like terrible. I don't know how chronically online you are. Maybe you're not as chronically online as me, but I'm like curious about this. Um, like how like is Twitter just making everything worse? Um,
I think
this is a question I have.
I am online often. I think I'm somehow not very good at parsing Twitter.
Mhm.
Weirdly, I think I'm somehow quite bad at reading things that are like in terms of a like ideological conflict or something. Like I think people are very quickly kind of like, oh well, if Bob had if Bob was really on Alice's team, he wouldn't have said this about Sally. And I'm just quickly like, I don't know what's going on. I need to write this down to track what the like the teams are here or something. And I think maybe that like comes more naturally to other people somehow, so it's like an easy kind of thing to write. I think things that are like more annoying and offensive on Twitter, often I'm just like, wow, I don't know what's happening. Moving on.
Mhm.
Which I think gives it like a better vibe, but also means that I'm relatively confused about the bits of it that are more fighty. Um, I guess it seems like the AI debates there. I guess I get a vibe of people having, a side that they're implicitly pushing for that doesn't seem very good. I think I'd be very fine with it if they were explicitly pushing for it more somehow.
Hmm. Interesting.
But I don't know. Why do I say they're not
Yeah.
explicitly pushing for it?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious about that because a lot of people have like just tried to sum up their entire AI position in like a single emoji. Like people have like a pause or a play or a like fast forward. And some people have an eject emoji, and there was
Oh,
one guy who had the eject emoji, and I was like, I can't remember who it was. I was like, what does the eject emoji mean? And he was like, it just means get me out of here. And I was like, yeah, that's valid. But anyway, yeah, like it does seem like a lot of people are like staking a position. And those positions maybe like are quite reductive a lot of the time. I actually took the pause emoji out of my name recently, for this reason, among other reasons. But yeah, like who are the people who are like not being upfront about the thing that they are pushing for?
I don't know if like actually they're not being upfront. I think they are being upfront, but they're like um I don't know, it seems like somehow not quite a sincere discussion, and I would rather be having a
Yeah.
sincere discussion. Like it's more somehow aimed at causing the reader to feel a thing.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's true.
We disagree
Yeah, there's a
about
lot
whether
of like,
it's to feel things, but I do
yeah,
sometimes cause my reader to feel a thing. So it feels like there are different ways of doing that 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 feel more or less above board, I guess. Uh, yeah, I would. It's like when I arrived in the AI safety scene, we used to have a bunch of arguments about like whether AI was dangerous and whether it would take over the world and stuff. I would have liked it if, as more people got into thinking about this at all, if we just did that again, like with a new batch of people thinking about it, we just like all sat down like, okay, but isn't it going to be fine? Like, I don't know, can you really like how are they going to get that much power, etc. I miss that. um
yeah. I guess that's another question is like, because I guess, I mean, I only started paying attention to this about a year ago, probably roughly around the time that a bunch of other people did. But I
yeah.
imagine that it must have been really weird if you'd been thinking about it for a really long time and then suddenly, like, the rest of the world, like, jumps on your bandwagon or something. Like, what is that like? Like, was that like a positive experience? Were you like, oh my God, cool, like, everyone's finally taking this thing seriously that I've been taking seriously for ages? Or was it more like when you like have a band that you really like and then like everyone else starts liking them and now they're like rubbish? Like I don't know. I mean, maybe not literally like that, but like I'm just curious because it maybe it does feel like the discourse is getting diluted in a bad way by a bunch of new people coming in, or maybe it's like really positive. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I don't feel like it is clearly diluted in a bad way. It seems like I don't know, there's sort of enough filtering of things that maybe I don't know. Like you can still, if you wanted to see the like if there was previously a small discourse, you can still find that if you want, and now you can also read whatever a bunch of other people think. So yeah, I think that doesn't seem particularly worse. And yeah, I think I also don't have the kind of like, my band is popular now, it's no fun liking it experience. I think, yeah, maybe I think maybe like at about the time, yeah, maybe I should wonder about myself more. I think like I for a while I was probably more like AI extra skeptical at the time when the people thinking about this were a smaller crowd and mostly very concerned. And so you're like, well, I used to have the like extremely contrarian view among an extremely contrarian group, and then when the rest of
Mhm.
the world joined, like started paying attention, then I more joined the merely contrarian group. So I've maintained a similar level of contrarianism the whole time by vaguely switching sides.
Oh, that's
But I
interesting.
don't
Wait,
think
so when did your level of concern jump up? Was that like around the time that everyone else started paying attention that you were like, yeah, I'm more convinced?
I think yeah, so like I don't think it really jumped so much. Well, it's not like there was like a day when it jumped up. I think it's also not so much that it's not like my level of thinking there's a risk changed so much as like I think it was earlier like I don't know, this probably isn't going to happen, and very plausibly we can figure out that it's not going to happen, and then we can stop worrying about it. Um,
Mm.
and uh, and it's more like my preferred strategy changed from really try hard to figure out if this is a risk or not to, well, seems tricky and we haven't ruled it out, so let's try and mitigate the risk such as it is. Which
Okay, interesting.
in some sense puts you on different sides, because like when you're trying to figure out if it's a risk, you're like, come now everyone, you're saying it's like 95%. Where's your argument? um
Hmm.
and yeah, and I guess like then mostly interacting with people who think it's much higher than like I don't know 10% or something, whereas then in the context of the larger world, if I'm like I don't know it's 10 or 20%, then I'm like in the very concerned category. So yeah,
Yeah.
it the sense of like which way am I generally pushing relative to other people probably shifted partly from the world changing. I mean, I think also around like yeah, the I think thinking about the slowing down AI stuff probably co- coincided with thinking uh, that I should more think about like just how to act, given that we continue to have uncertainty about this.
Hmm.
And I think like in early 2023, when things felt especially wild, probably I was also substantially more concerned then, or felt like, oh man, we need to do something about this quickly. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, so you were like trying to figure out like a definitive answer to this question of like, do we need to be worried? And then you were like, oh, okay, like seems like there's no way to arrive at a clear answer. So given that we can't know, we should be pretty worried.
Or maybe
um,
I still think we maybe could arrive at a clear answer, but
mm,
I'm pretty slow at it. Doesn't seem like other people are working on it that much. It seems like the problem is maybe coming toward us quite rapidly, so
yeah.
not really worth it to try and answer definitively. Um, yeah,
But it's like it might be, I guess it might be the case that like it is kind of an unanswerable question, in as much as like
yeah,
if what we're doing is just like making a new species of thing that are gonna think much better and very differently to us, then it seems weird that you would ever be able to predict how that was going to go. Like, I don't know. Like, it seems like maybe there is no answer to find. Um, but I guess I could be
yeah.
thinking about that wrong.
I feel like there's how it's gonna go, but then there's also like, will it destroy the human race? Which is like a low, like that's quite an extreme thing to happen. Or like you might think
Yes.
low probability on priors. So even if you might be like, forecasting is hard. I don't know if we can tell what's going to happen with China next year. But if I'm like, but is China going to spontaneously combust? You can be like, no. That's like,
Yeah.
there might happen and things that won't happen. And I
Yeah.
yeah,
That's fair. Like, but I guess maybe. Well, yeah. Maybe we can never rule it out, but we can also like never say how likely it is, given that maybe we're just not going to be in control of the future fairly soon. and given that that's the case, we just have like no way of putting probabilities on anything. I don't know. Maybe that's like too pessimistic. But
Lots of people with no control over the rest of the world manage to put probabilities on things happening in it. For instance.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. I don't know. I'm very confused about this, as is everyone.
Yeah. I feel like you asked 2 questions, I didn't answer the second one. Yeah.
Yeah. What was my other question? I forgot.
Oh, I guess you were like, how did it feel for all these people to join
the discussion?
I think like partly people have joined the discussion gradually over the years, so it just often has felt surprising. Like, like it's like I think there was a point where, you know, no, or roughly no kind of academics would take this kind of thing seriously. It felt like, or like it felt like it was just a very niche, like, you know, people who don't actually do AI professionally concern club. And I think like when a bunch of, I don't know, prominent people were interested, or I don't know, when like Stephen Hawking was interested, yeah, that was pretty surprising. And so I think the conversation had been like ramping up for a while in surprising steps. Yeah, I think it felt a bit wild. Actually, also just lots of surprising things happen in my life, so it's you know, one of many. I think it also felt like, I think a possibility you missed is that, like, I feel like often if I have a concern about a thing, I would sort of like it to be dismissed, so that, you know, like it would be good if it turned out that I was being silly. Like, I don't know, I'm a kind of anxious person. Sometimes I'm anxious about like stuff. You know, I'll talk to my friends and they'll be like, "You're being silly," and I'm like, "Oh, good." I think there was a possibility that when lots of other people came to pay attention to this, they'd be like, "Wow, this is ridiculous," and just like, you know, all the AI researchers would be like, "This cannot happen, you guys. What is wrong with you?" And so.
Oh yeah, so it's like, oh, you're like, oh, my concern is being vindicated, and you're like, oh no, my concern is being vindicated.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. Yeah.
Like, never wanted this concern, to be clear. Like, I would.
Yeah.
Right on Twitter, like, oh yeah, these people, you know, that like worrying about AI risk, like they probably just want to worry about AI risk because it makes them feel cool or something, or like, I feel like people speculate that, you know, things about the survey are so that I can continue to get funding for the survey. I hate doing the survey. I don't enjoy working on this. I just don't want the world to be destroyed.
Yeah, I think this is like definitely, this is a very silly criticism. The one that's like, oh, these, like, I mean, maybe like people will say this about someone like Eliezer. They're like, he's making a career out of like hyping up this doomsday scenario. Like, I get the impression from him that he would be absolutely overjoyed if he found some hole in his own argument. Like,
also, I think he can just very much have a career. Like, it's not like this is the only career he's fit for. He would be a fine science fiction writer.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what his.
Yeah, there's definitely like an alternate timeline where he's just still writing like fan fiction all the time, and that's like the only thing that he's famous for. That's a good point.
I don't know what his alternate options are like, but I feel like, I guess I feel relatively. I feel like my job is like a pretty hard one to feel like I'm doing well, so I'd probably have a better time if I was like doing a different job that it's like possible to, you know, feel really successful at. Sorry, I feel relatively successful here sometimes. Like, I guess our first paper was the 16th most discussed paper in the world. That was quite in 2017.
Wow.
Yeah, then I felt certainly successful in some sense. But it's still like, tell if you're like making a positive or negative difference to things. I'm inclined to say positive there, but it's like, I don't know, it caused like a huge bunch of articles on the topic, or like people saying stuff about it. Is that good? I think so, but other people I talk to have different models of things than me. Yeah.
I'm like fairly confident that more people knowing about this is just good. I don't know. I know some people have like complicated arguments for why it's like actually bad for the public to find out about this, because then they will panic or react wrong or like not understand the nuance or something, and it would be better if it all got sorted out behind closed doors among experts. I just like don't find that convincing. Like
Yeah.
when is I don't know, like and even just on principle, it's like good for people to know about something possibly affecting them. Like I don't know, it just seems wrong for people not to know. Like I think that's pretty
feels very
simple.
unprincipled. Like the thing you described there, like, yeah, they should know. What if they panic? We should decide what happens without telling them. Like feels very right.
It's quite condescending.
Yeah. It's like I think the main
like
legit-ish concern or thing that I don't know how to deal with in this space is things like arms races, where I think people like, it's true that if you more loudly shout like we're in an arms race, that might cause more, like might be a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I think if you like try to accurately assess whether you're in an arms race, that's like decently likely to show that you're less in an arms race than you thought, or are in some part of an arms race where it's not a good idea to race because the other people are too far ahead of you or something like that. Like I think it's much more complicated, but I feel like there's some legit concern about causing bad things to happen by saying what the situation is.
Yeah, so you use like speak the thing into existence or something. You're like,
yeah.
Everyone's like, we're racing, and then the other side is like, oh my god, they're racing, I must also race, and then everyone's like feverishly like trying to outcompete each other.
But I think it's important like I think it's important in my role to be trustworthy. So I guess like I don't want to do research projects where I'm not like, I guess I'm very wary of like looking into, are we in an arms race, and then only saying the answer publicly if we're not, or something. So I'm not sure how to deal with that kind of issue, but yeah, I think it's important to be such that the people, like if your role is trying to advise the world rather than like trying to directly do things, then you really want to be such that they should want to listen to you.
Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, I think you're doing uncontroversially good things.
Okay.
But, that's whatever my opinion's worth. I don't know. I guess we should probably wrap up soon because I've already taken 15 minutes more of your time than I slotted in for. But yeah, do you have anything else you want to say while we're here, or any other takes you just want to throw out?
I guess I think an important thing is like, I feel like the AI discussion, I guess we were talking about the AI discussion on Twitter. I feel like in general, the discussion about AI, it's like somewhat easier tempting for it to be ideological, I think, or used as like some like a thing for demonstrating what kind of person you are, rather than being treated in the way that you would treat like a really urgent physical problem, like your house being on fire or something. I guess I would urge people to try and keep this topic more in the like, how do we deal with a practical hard problem kind of mind space, like try to actually really understand what's going on. Like maybe the only way it will matter is in like voting and that sort of thing, or like supporting one policy over another policy, but it just seems like a really important place to try and keep ideologicalness and like non-reality tracking forces. Like, it was really important to keep those things out of the way on this particular topic, just because I think the stakes are very high, and we could really mess it up.
Yeah, I would agree. It's
Making
unfortunate that like it does seem like you can signal a lot about, like, to a certain crowd, you can like signal something about what kind of person you are by either buying into or not buying into that this is a problem or something. I don't know. I'm not like expressing that very well, but it's like,
that seems right.
I don't know. Like I think I frequently get accused of, like, neuroticism or like anxiety or whatever, for like being concerned about this. Or like I've had people literally say things like AI safety as a movement or an organization like is quote unquote an anxiety disorder. But it's like you can't, like, there doesn't, to me there doesn't seem to be any correlation between having an anxious temperament in general and happening to be worried about this particular thing. So it's like a totally ridiculous criticism, but it's like very often leveraged at people. And like, yes, or like being the opposite, like being an accelerationist is a way to signal that you're like really into building things and you just like want to get out there and like make the world better, and like you're like skeptical of interventions that try to slow things down and ruin everything. And like I guess there is some precedent in the past for regulations ruining everything, so like in a way like it's like easy for those people to, I don't know, try and like signal something that other people might think is good. I'm not expressing this very well, but it's just an unfortunate state of affairs where it's like it's like if you are in a house that's on fire, but like nobody can agree whether or not the fire's like invisible, and then like nobody knows if it's there, and then a certain ideological stripe is more inclined to say there's a fire and a certain stripe is inclined to say there isn't one. I don't know, it's just like it's kind of a mess.
It's like if
I don't know what to do about it either.
Visible fire in your house, like I think it's true that like the person who's like, we really need to find out where the invisible fire is more likely to be an anxious person. The person who's more like, I don't, I'm just going to like, let's find it and I'll walk into it, is more likely to be like a masculine kind of a person who's like not afraid of. But it's just like indicating those things about yourselves is just so much less important than not having your house burned down. Like, if you can find some other way to signal your personality, like, go for it. Like, if
maybe we just need to like encourage people in the AI debate to get other hobbies.
Like offer specific other like signaling routes, like
just like something like, I don't know, you could just like start supporting a sports team and like feel really strongly about that, and then you can just create another Twitter alt to talk about that thing, and you can scratch the like signaling itch that way.
I was thinking like, I don't know, maybe I don't know what that signals. I think you could have like some kind of intense contest to show your lack of fear and build things or something, and in support of AI safety. So you're like, I'm the really concerned about AI safety, wrestling fire thing or something. Yeah, I don't know. I should think.
Are you advocating for like actual wrestling matches here?
Maybe, yeah.
Well, where and when should we do this? Sounds fun.
We used to be a decent amount of foot to face, which is a kind of fighting sport in the local Bay Area.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but I guess it's gone out of fashion.
Well, I guess someone needs to bring it back.
So you grab hands with each other and then try and put your foot in the other person's face, which is just gently. It's a nicely even sport. Like people with a lot of different strengths can sort of play against one another, I think. Yeah.
It sounds very hilarious to watch.
It's very good. Anyways.
Awesome. This is a fun place to end. And everyone can end on that nice visual. So thanks again for chatting with me. Do you want to tell people where to find you if they don't know, which they probably do, but in case they don't?
Yeah, worldspiritsockpuppet.com is my blog, or .substack.com is another version of it. And AIimpacts.org is my AI forecasting project
Awesome.
website.
I have one more question. What does World Spirit Sock Puppet mean, if it means anything?
Yeah. Well, the kind of personal identity not really real. There's just all this consciousness in the world. Maybe like it's all like one entity in some sense. Maybe we like come to understand each other better, and maybe I guess slightly different thought. Maybe the world can be more sort of like agentic and understanding itself, and it's more reasonable to think of it as like one world spirit type thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then in sock puppet, like on the internet, if you make a lot of alternate accounts and they talk to each other to like, pretend there are more of you or something. So the idea is like the world spirit, the sort of global consciousness awakening or something, has all these sock puppets on the internet, like pretending to be different bloggers talking to each other. And this is one of them.
Amazing. I love it. That's such an excellent Substack name. I wanted consistentlycandid.substack.com, but someone took that. But they haven't posted anything on it, which is like not very consistently candid of them. But yes.
They consistently
anyway.
Thing.
Yeah, exactly. But yes. Anyway, thank you so much for your time, and yeah, this has been really fun.
Pleasure. Nice to meet you.